Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by T.A. Forsberg and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So it's so refreshing to meet young business people taking risks, finding success, and winning awards. Well, today we get to meet a local success story, the Principal of BeneGuides, Justine Bell. Welcome to the show, Justine.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So share with us a little bit about your personal background, kind of where are you from, where'd you go to school, early career work, just to paint the picture of who we're talking to here.
I'm a local, grew up in Hazlitt, so definitely part of the area. Went away for college to a tiny place called Earlham College in Indiana, met my husband, transplanted him here, which is lovely.
Nice.
After college, weirdly, I was mostly a nonprofit girl.
Okay.
So I worked at Capital Area Humane Society. When we were living in our college town, I worked at the Humane Society there as well. And then when my son was born, I had to get what I call a big girl job because nonprofits can't always pay well. And the daycare that we liked, I would have gotten paid less than we would have to pay per hour to send him to daycare.
Right.
So I went out looking for a big girl job, and I had a friend in the insurance sales business, which was kind of scary at the time, but he said he thought I'd be great. And I was like, sure, let's give it a try.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so sales and insurance was not in your bandwidth. How did you get trained? Did you have mentors, or how did that all evolve?
Absolutely. I don't think any child wakes up in the morning and is like, you know what I want to do? It's insurance sales. I just have been dreaming about that since I was a little girl. But I think when I never knew exactly what I wanted to do, my husband always knew that he wanted to be a computer programmer, and that was the cadence of his life, right? Like he planned it in. That's what he wanted to do. And for me, I think the theme was I always wanted to help people, but I didn't know exactly what that looked like. So nonprofit was a obvious
natural,
fit.
Yep.
I thought maybe running for office, but coming into what I do now turned out to be a really perfect fit. And also I get paid a living wage, which is lovely.
That's awesome. So, it's funny you mentioned on insurance and how people don't tend to just be pining away in college saying, I can't wait to get out of here so I can go start my life in insurance. As a little bit of a sidebar, that's becoming problematic. We're actually in mid-Michigan in particular, an insurance hub in the U.S.
Yes.
We have a lot of insurance carriers here, and they are all clamoring for talent.
Yes.
And I know that like Olivet College, who knew, right? It really specializes in, just like Northwood does with automotive, dealership management and that kind of stuff. Olivet is a big insurance school, but there's a lot of energy going into now really banging the drum on how much of an insurance state Michigan is.
Absolutely.
And trying to kind of high tides raise all boats and get the industry as a whole to work with the talent attraction team for the state of Michigan and work with higher ed and try to really drive insurance can be cool, and they're major corporations, right? So they also need IT and HR, and AI is a thing. And so it isn't just dry old boring insurance as the student might think of it.
Well, and also diversity. So there's a lot of, I know Rathbun Insurance particularly is doing a lot with high school students and going into the Lansing schools and the other area schools and saying this is a career path, and it's one that doesn't require a college degree, which is really interesting. I do have a college degree. It was very expensive, but sometimes I wake up and laugh because I didn't, the things that I am doing don't necessarily require that. It's a licensure, which is, I think, good to know.
Good point. And then the Jackson Zone is, I just got a tour of that, which is really really a win-win, right?
They're doing amazing things.
It's hundreds of college students getting a paid job.
Yes.
To do work that Jackson doesn't need to hire full-time people for. And then it's a try it before you buy it, right?
Exactly.
Their employee hiring comes from their kind of grow your own kind of a mindset. So anyway, fascinating, interesting. I'm bullish on it, and I'm grateful that you're here. So how did you end up specializing, right? Because insurance can be of all types, right? And I'm learning that as I engage with these different insurance carriers around the country and the state. But you kind of have found a niche that you're very comfortable in and you're really good at, which is awesome. Talk about that niche and how did you kind of wander into that?
Absolutely. So earlier you talked about mentors. And when I started at Cedar River Insurance, which was the company that we broke off from, my boss there sat me down and told me that I would work harder if I loved what I did, if I felt if I felt it in my soul, right? If I felt good about it. And so I started out in P&C, property and casualty, selling to businesses, which was fine. I mean, you could save a couple $100, maybe a couple $1,000 to a business, which was lovely, and that helped their bottom line, but it didn't really drive me in the way that nonprofit work had, in the way that other things had. And so it felt like they didn't have a lot of questions about business insurance, but often they had questions about health insurance. And so they were like, well, I can absolutely quote my P&C, but also, do you know what getting a small group health plan would be like? If it's too expensive, like, could I put my employees on the marketplace? Can I pay for that? How do all those things work? And I have a problem where when I'm presented with a question, I have to know the answer. Like, I have to figure it out. So I started doing research. I started finding people that could answer my questions. I just scheduled. I was like, hey, imagine I don't know anything about this. Can we sit down for an hour and you can just tell me where to start? What questions do I need to be asking? What questions would I expect the person to be asking? How do I do this? And so I dove deeper and deeper into health insurance, starting with the small group space, moving into the marketplace, because sometimes small group isn't appropriate for a small group, depending on income, depending on how the business is doing. And then as those people started to age, they started to have questions about Medicare, because 65 or disability provides Medicare. And so they were like, well, what do we do now? I was like, I don't know. Give me a couple weeks and I'll figure it out.
Right.
And so now we do all three of those things. We have a arm of the company that does small group. We have an arm of the company that does what we call individual, which is mostly marketplace, family, under 65, that space. And then we have an arm of the company that does Medicare.
Got it. Okay. So I can see the parallels between insurance and serving the community and being that educated resource for something that people really need anyway, and the nonprofit that you came from, right? So that blending of it's informed sales, right? I mean, it's really, you need it anyway, so build trust and find the person that can put you in the right bucket.
We always joke that it's, for us, at least in our company, it's more like social work than sales. And I think the reasons for that are that when you approach health insurance, I think most people approach it with a lot of anxiety. And that's because they know it's consistently in the top 5 costs of a household. It is an expensive asset. It is something that you need. And most people feel like they don't understand it. So you're spending a lot of money on something that you don't really understand. And you know it's important that you make a good choice, but you really don't have the tools to make that choice. So when people are coming in, they're usually really stressed. And so the first thing that we do is just try to create a safe space for them. Just say, hey, we are here to answer any question that you have. There's no such thing as a silly question, and I promise that you won't ask anything that we haven't heard before. Also, unlike home and auto insurance, it can be a really vulnerable thing to talk about health insurance, because you might have to tell me that you're taking metformin because you're pre-diabetic, but that's something that you maybe don't feel good about.
Right.
Or you have a medication that might be stigmatized. And so we have to create a safe space for you to be able to tell those things to us, or we can't do our jobs correctly. So it is sales. If you're talking technically, right? We have sales jobs, but honestly, it's almost more like social work, I think, in the day-to-day space.
Right. And when people go into those types of situations and conversations, trying to figure out where they're going to buy and what they're going to buy, they also come in a little guarded, right? It's like, they get, they're all prepared to defend, and how much is this person selling me what they want to sell me versus what I actually need? And so we've created the stigma, kind of like attorneys. It's like the reputation of the industry is based on the people that do it wrong.
Yes.
Salespeople, you think the used car salesman. It's like, well, there are a lot of great salespeople like yourself that, because it doesn't feel like sales.
Yes.
It's like, yes, you have a product and you're going to pay a fee for the service I'm providing. But at the end of the day, my job is to get you in the right place.
And actually, let me say, you are not going to pay a fee for the service that we are providing. Just like your home and auto agent, you don't pay us anything for the consultation, for any of it.
Got it.
Which is nice.
So it's the premium to the carrier.
Yes.
But you're the service
pay
provider.
Us.
Got it. Right.
Yep. Which is great.
Yeah, it's a great distinction, because I know that, but anecdotally, I think it's important to make that differentiation.
Well, and sometimes we get to the end of a meeting with somebody, and then they get this look on their face, and I'm like, what's the problem?
We just had this
great, and they're like, okay, but like, what is the cost of all those things that we just did together? And I'm like, oh, it's nothing. Like, you're welcome here anytime. We can answer anything.
Right.
You're fine. Come on in.
That's awesome. So you recently took a bold step. You talked about breaking off and all this, and we talked about BeneGuides. So talk a little bit about when you made that decision and what made you believe that was, well, what did you do and why was it the right time?
Absolutely. So I started with an amazing company called Cedar River Insurance. And when I started, it was almost primarily property and casualty, which means home, auto, business. And I started in the business space, and then I kind of started edging over into health insurance and doing a little bit more and doing a little bit more. And then I was too busy, so I hired someone, and then we had to hire another someone. So at that point, it's a team of 3, and it's no longer a small part of the business. But a lot of the tools that exist for P&C are not the same tools that exist for health insurance. And so we were really trying to do this square peg round hole business. And it just got to the point where what we were doing was big enough that we needed different tools. So I purchased my part of the business, and we broke off into a separate company that only does health insurance.
Got it.
And named that BeneGuides.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So was your decision to do that the natural evolution of your kind of your age and the path that you wanted to follow and goals that you had set up, or did like the pandemic happen to kind of sharpen, like, because we talk about the Great Resignation or even the evolution of careers and the change in values, and a lot of people were making bold choices at this time. Did any of that play in, do you think, or was it kind of just the natural evolution of who you were anyway?
The pandemic is such a funny thing. I mean, not funny, haha, right?
Right.
But like, so the pandemic happened and everyone went home. And all of my friends, a lot of my friends were like laid off, or they worked in an office, and so they're at home and they're watching Netflix. Everybody watched Tiger King. It was a thing. We didn't have time to do that because when people are laid off, they lose their health insurance. And so it was wild. We were super busy constantly. People, hey, I just lost my job. My health insurance is paid through this state, or I just lost my job and I lost my health insurance. I don't know what to do. There was a lot of anxiety, not only about the pandemic itself, but also about loss of job and loss of coverage. Because I think that, when you lose a job, you're like, oh no, I lost money. And then you're like, oh no, I lost benefits. Like, what do I do?
Right. So, benefits in an area during a time when people are getting sick. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So double whammy. Wow. I never even really thought that through. Yeah.
Everybody was like, oh yeah, we're just Netflix and chill. And I'm like, I'm so busy. Like, please stop talking to me about Tiger King. And so I think that it definitely did have a part of it because our business grew, and I felt guilty. Like, I feel like I had some survivor's guilt because everyone else was losing their job.
Right.
And like, I'm working really hard. Like, we're bringing in clients consistently, constantly, every day. And so I think that the pandemic definitely played a part in it because it was kind of an up ramp to like what we have technology wise really isn't working for us. And we were home. And so we didn't really have access to the office things. And it was, I would say it did play a significant role.
Well, as you talk about making sure you're prepared for weird circumstances when it comes to managing your finances and planning for your future, I suggest you contact my friends at Wagoner Financial. Whether you're just getting started, getting ready to retire, or anywhere in between, Wagoner Financial can help you make smart financial decisions. Don't navigate complex problems on your own. Wagoner has the expertise to help you feel confident that you're making the right financial choices. Contact an advisor by calling 517-853-3367 or visit their website at wagoner-financial.com. So that's fascinating. So now everything gets busy. You're in the pandemic, and we're, quote unquote, out of the pandemic, and you make this decision.
Yes.
Right. So was it building? Was it? Did you have kind of a proverbial windfall that just said, "Hey, now I want to work on my own," or how did you evolve into making BeneGuides your brand?
It was. It's difficult. I think that the amount of inertia it takes to make a change is hard, right? Mm-hmm. So no matter what the situation is, whether it's a good or bad situation, taking the time to say, okay, I need to make something different happen, like that can be really complex. And for me, I knew that when we purchased the book of business, we were going to purchase it at a particular rate. And so every time I brought in a new client, I knew I had to pay more than that
right.
to buy my book. And so it was a matter of, when do I have enough to pay 20% down on a loan?
Right.
And then also, like, how big can I let this get before I can't purchase it anymore?
Right.
So
right.
There was a lot of math.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So when did you pull the trigger and start BeneGuides?
We started having conversations in August of 22, and we officially made the purchase happen on January 5th of 2023.
Got it. All right.
Yeah.
So you just hit your 1-year anniversary.
Yes.
Recording this early February of 24. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Okay. So you've got a staff.
Mm-hmm.
You that was obviously part of the discussion, that the people that you had kind of working on your team came over with you.
Yes.
And looking at your website, that's even grown?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We added one more in the summer. She does all of the small group business.
Got it.
Yep.
And BeneGuides. So talk about social handles or website, or what would people see if they were to explore you?
We're bad millennials, so we have only Facebook and website, no Instagram,
Okay.
although nobody, like, how do you take pictures of insurance? It's not.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so you can find us at www.beneguides.com, BENE for benefits, and then guides, GUIDES.com.
Got it.
And we're also on Facebook.
Got it. Okay. And while you're mid-Michigan based, I would imagine
Anywhere in the state of Michigan.
In the state of Michigan, right? Because licensing and all
Yes.
the premium numbers.
We got really good at Zoom during the pandemic.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, all right. And so that's up and running. And obviously you don't seem to have a lot of regret in making this decision. You feel like you landed on your feet. You made the transition stable.
Yes.
Got like payroll and rent and
It's
I mean
wild.
like all that stuff, right?
Yep.
Now you're a business owner as opposed to working for a small business owner and observing it.
Yes.
You're now living it.
It's different.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're digging it.
I'm digging it.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yep.
Good for you. So now you were also named, you won a prestigious award here. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Absolutely. We won the Athena PowerLink Award, and it is through a women's organization called Athena, which runs through the Lansing Chamber.
Yep.
And it is it's basically like lighting a flame under your business. It is, you get a group of people, you get to choose them, and they are experts in different fields. And then you meet quarterly with them as a group, and then you meet one-on-one with them individually over the course of the year to sort of jumpstart your business, what your needs are, what your questions are, those sort of things. So it's literally tens of thousands of dollars in services and support that are available for women business owners.
And for you, because you won the award.
Yes.
Right. So got it. So it's in-kind services.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the variety of stuff, like what types of services are this cohort, your
Absolutely.
your new executive committee,
My
as it were.
executive committee. I have 6 people.
Okay.
I have a lawyer. I have, because you never know when you're going to have legal questions.
Yeah, of course.
That comes out of the
contracts
blue.
and absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. HR. So we have a CPA. We are in the midst of moving offices, and so we specifically requested a interior designer.
Okay.
We have a marketing professional, and then we have somebody who is specifically there for business growth.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
And how did you get this award? What did they talk to you much about the process for like nomination and selection, or did this all come out of left field,
complex.
or did you know all the way through?
It was so fun. No, I didn't know. So you have to be nominated, which is great, fine. So I was nominated, which was lovely. And then you do a one-on-one interview with the panel. So it's you sit there at one table, and then there's just like a U shape of amazing, powerful women around you, just like rapid fire questions. So you have to be prepared to answer anything about your business, what you do, what your bottom line is, how much can you like get out to them. And then they come on site for an interview. So interview number 2. And then after that, they make a selection.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you won.
I did. My team is amazing. And so I I was probably more nervous about the one-on-one interview than I was about the coming in, because we have morning meeting every morning, and we do a lot of stuff based on Brene Brown, like how we meet and how the process goes. And so they came in, the subcommittee that came in, and they just participated with us, and it was just a really lovely experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And I heard you say we won.
Yeah, we won.
Yeah, because I think of, your name and picture was in the article, and Lansing, Chamber has been happy to bang the drum of Justine Bell.
Yes.
But you seem to own it as a young, budding corporation.
Yeah, my group, my girls laugh at me a little bit, but I really do. I know that at the end of the day, the buck stops with me, and if a decision has to be made, it has to be my decision.
Yep.
But we're a very parallel structure, so we really make all of our decisions together, which I love.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so you're moving again.
Yes.
So again, I guess it doesn't really matter all that much to the listeners where you're located, but you were at least in Okemos.
Yep.
In mid-Michigan. Are you staying in Okemos?
We're staying in Okemos.
Okay.
We wanted to stay close enough that if somebody arrived at our old location, they wouldn't have to drive too far to get to the new location. So it's only 5 minutes, which is nice.
Got it.
But we had a staff of 4 in 3 offices. And so now we're going to be a staff of 4 in 6 offices.
All right.
Yep.
Preparing for growth.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now your customers, when we just kind of role played a little anecdotally of your conversations with these people, it seemed like they were individuals.
Yes.
But when I think about BeneGuides, benefits and guides, I think of business owners that are looking for as an employer, I need to provide benefits for the employees, but you talked more about individuals. Talk about that distinction and kind of who are your traditional customers. If I'm listening to the show, how do I know whether I should be calling you to see what your offerings are or not?
That's a great question. Most of the time, what I tell people is anybody who has questions about getting health insurance. So we are not the person to call if your company has a policy and you want to know what your company's deductible is, unless your company is with us, in which case we can answer that.
Right.
But if they're not affiliated, those aren't necessarily questions that we can answer. But if you lost a job and you lost health insurance, if you're considering going out on your own and you want to know what health insurance would cost you, if you're turning 65 and getting into Medicare, you want to compare what your business offers if you're still working with what's available on the private market. All sorts of those questions are things that we do. One of the most complex things, and you touched on this, and I don't know if you meant to, but I'm going to answer it anyway.
Wonderful.
Is that there is the health insurance marketplace exists, and that gives you rate reductions based on your zip code, your family size, and your income. So sometimes a small group calls us and they say, we're thinking about offering health insurance, and we come in and we're like, for instance, a group of electricians. They're union, they're making good money. A group health insurance policy, if you're paying full price, is always less money for better coverage than an individual policy.
Okay.
But if, for instance, a daycare, there's a handful of daycares that we work with, they unfortunately don't make that much money. And so when you take a look at, first of all, what the daycare can afford to pay for their employees, and secondly, what the employees are making, they're significantly better on the marketplace because they get more choice, they get high rate reductions on the marketplace, and so they can sometimes get a free or a reduced cost plan, and then the daycare, which is already struggling to pay its people as best they can, is not shelling out a bunch of extra money for a group health insurance plan that actually doesn't really benefit the employees anyway. So a lot of times when we go out on a small group quote, we usually go in person if we can, if it's local, and then we'll talk a lot about, well, what makes sense for you? What makes sense for your employees? What's your budget? And what are your employees making? Is it really better to do one way or the other?
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think listeners will know whether this applies to them or not, right? So that's fantastic. All right. So remind everyone of the website again. Yep.
www.BeneGuides, BeneGuides.com.
And it's a great site. In preparation for this, I read the announcement of your award and knew that you were moving on to your own. And so just navigating and preparing myself, I felt like the website really told your story nicely. So congratulations on getting that done. Congratulations on everything you're accomplishing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we've been talking to a local success story, the principal of BeneGuides, Justine Bell. Thanks so much for being a part of the show.
My pleasure.